Natural materials like leaves, bark, and seed pods can do more than change how an aquarium looks. They can influence the entire aquarium ecosystem. We spoke with Ben from Betta Botanicals to learn more. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for taking the time to speak with us.
Of course, very excited to be here. Very excited.
First, can you just kind of tell us what is Betta Botanicals? What is it that you specialize in?
Absolutely. So Betta Botanicals turns 5 years old in July, and the mission is to help people recreate the natural environment of their fish in their home aquariums. And so I do that through partnering with collectors all over the globe where lots of popular aquarium fish are sourced or can be found natively. We study the habitats where these fish are found, and then we find the leaves, seed pods, and bark, not from the native habitat, but from adjacent habitats. So we have reduced impact, and then they collect it, clean it, process it, ship it to me, and then I put it on compostable packaging and then shipped right to your door. I like to say from the forest to you. It's on the tape of all of my product boxes that I ship all over the globe.
It's cool that you sourced the botanicals like that. I didn't know you got them from all around the country and even like really close spots to where fish like actually are coming from, which is cool. So my first question is like, what are some of the benefits of adding botanicals to a tank?
I think for me, the really main benefits are the habitat it creates in the aquarium. It helps to tint the water a color, like in my background image here, that our fish kind of evolved within. So their colors blend in with the water. It makes them feel more secure, so they color up better. The leaves create habitat for fish to hide in. They can forage for, we call it supplemental nutrition, but this is kind of the micro and macro fauna of the aquarium that just seems to appear out of nowhere, especially for those of us on tap water. Daphnia, copepods, all these kinds of detritus worms just show up. So the botanicals really help to cultivate that layer of the food web that's often missing from more standard aquascaped aquariums. There's also the whole plethora of antioxidants and tannins and humic substances that help to reduce pathological bacteria within the water column. And this is something that I am recently relearning, because all of the literature, you go on Reddit, you go on any social media, and everyone's like, tannins, 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 the best thing for your fish. But when you look at the scientific research, and I'm working on a document that I'll post up on the website as well as a PDF one-pager, in order to have meaningful concentrations of tannins as replicated in the scientific studies, you would need to use so many leaves that it would create concentrations of compounds that would kill your fish. So that made me turn to, okay, what is actually the benefit of using the botanicals if the tannin concentration can't be high enough to actually reduce bacteria? And it's the humic substances. So this is the humic and fulvic acids. So there are a couple studies that have come out that at passive leaf release, so what we do in the aquarium, those concentrations can be meaningful and help to reduce pathological bacteria, increase antioxidant levels for the fish, help with slime coat. There's these pores, I think they're pores that are on fish scales, and tannins, humic substances, help to shrink those. So pathological microbes have a harder time adhering to the surface of the fish. It's very difficult to get concrete studies of all these passive leaf concentrations. So for me, that's why I like to look at the habitat benefits and less about kind of these antioxidants. I look at them as passive benefits, but the concrete science is still lagging for us to be able to say a guava leaf used at this many leaves per gallon is going to benefit your fish with this concentration. It's so difficult to do.
When you talk about like how to prepare them, can you just put them in the water, or it's more of a process?
So question has sort of two answers. If you go and self-collect botanicals, which I am in full support, it gets people out into nature as long as you do it safely and you know where you're going, you're prepared. I think it's great. It's a good way to connect with the natural environment around you. If you go to an area where you're confident they don't do any agricultural spraying, there's no drift from houses, you're far away from roads, you can take those botanicals and introduce them into your aquariums without any preparation. So if you do self-collection, you can use them without preparation. I still recommend rinsing them because I like to say you can't inspect every Texas live oak leaf for bird poop, and we don't want bird poop in our aquarium. So definitely still rinse them. Since I have these materials shipped to me from overseas or shipped to me from Florida, or even Texas, I recommend botanical prep because these botanicals change hands so many times. So this helps if anything accidentally ends up on the materials. The botanical prep will dilute any potential contaminants down to concentrations that won't impact your fish. With all that said, I test every single batch of materials that enters the ecosystem garage in case a customer doesn't follow the prep instructions. And as long as the materials pass QA/QC, then they move through and they get shipped to customers. So with all that in mind, the prep helps with those potential contaminants, dust, bird poop. But what it also helps to do is mimic the natural dilution that these botanicals would experience in nature, because Indian almond leaves fall into hundreds or thousands of gallons of water, not a 5-gallon aquarium. And so there might be residual sugars in the leaves because it fell off the tree a little too early, and those sugars in the aquarium might spike bacterial populations. Bacteria consume oxygen, our fish and shrimp consume oxygen, they might compete for each other. It's not harmful bacteria, it's the beneficial bacteria, the nitromonas, can't quite remember which one it is, but it's the beneficial bacteria in the aquarium. When you add these materials in, it just elevates and lifts all populations of bacteria. And so the prep instructions help to dilute compounds in the botanicals so that they can integrate into the aquarium more gently.
Would you recommend adding like a whole botanical over like a liquid additive?
Great question, because this is also a hot topic on TikTok. I am pro whole botanicals over liquids for a number of reasons. Liquids usually are heat treated beyond like what we would do in normal preparation, and it can alter some of the beneficial compounds in the botanicals. You also can't reliably create a specific concentration of extract because, for example, Indian almond leaves, one of the most popular leaves to turn into a liquid extract. If you collect an Indian almond leaf on the seashore versus inland, it contains a different composition of tannins, humic substances, residual sugars, residual minerals, and vitamins. You take those two places, and then throughout the seasons, throughout the time of year, they're going to have different concentrations of leaves, different concentrations of those compounds in the leaves. And so replicating that reliably in extract preparation, kind of like it's difficult. It also immediately changes water chemistry. It doesn't allow things to adjust over a longer period of time, which if you have like wild fish is more important because they're more sensitive. So I think the best thing you can do is use whole leaves, whole seed pods. The gray area right now, people talk about, oh, well, your Betta tea is an extract. And my initial response is, we use whole crushed leaves. It is actual leaves, actual bark, actual seed pods crushed up in a paper tea bag. It alters water chemistry gently when you put it in the aquarium and diffuses into the water.
And people will, I think, hear how like beneficial they are, and then assume maybe like, okay, well, more is better, I'm going to put a ton in at once. Can you kind of talk about like some precautions regarding like, you know, if you should pace the amount that you add?
Definitely. The preparation instructions I have on the site, I have a starting point, which is 2 to 3 botanicals per 5 gallons. Let them condition through the GU phase, which the GU phase is when the biofilms show up and then they subside, and then you conduct a water change, and then you can repeat. Starting point, because every person's aquarium is a little different. Water temperature influences how quickly it goes through the GU phase. If you have shrimp, they might consume the biofilms as quickly as they grow. So that's kind of the starting point. What matters most is the time scale. If you took an entire bag of Texas live oak leaves and added it into your 5-gallon aquarium in one sitting, you're probably going to create so much beneficial bacteria and fungal colonies that are going to consume all the oxygen in the water, and your fish will die. But if you follow the 2 to 3 botanicals per 5 gallons, which in this case would be like pinches of live oak leaves, and you just rinsed and repeated that process until you'd use the whole bag, but you're talking about adding it over 2 months, you can fit that whole bag of leaves into the aquarium. But you just have to pace yourself, let nature adjust. So let the biofilms grow and subside, and then once you notice things stabilize, you can add a little bit more. So it really comes down to, you can add too many at one sitting, but over a longer time scale, you can't really, I mean, in nature, leaf litter beds are like 10 inches deep. So in theory, we can do that in the home aquarium over a long time scale.
It's important for people to keep in mind, it's not just like visual, like structural kind of enrichment. I mean, it's actually having an impact on water chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say like this is something for beginners, like a brand new beginner fish keeper should delve into botanicals if they do it properly?
Absolutely. The best beginner botanicals would be catappa leaves, alder cones. I would say the best seed pod that creates a cave for your fish would be Sterculia pods. Those do grow like a pretty encapsulating biofilm around them. So it's kind of like, okay, you have a handle on the leaves and the alder cones, and now it's like, okay, seed pod. You just have to be okay with those biofilms, because everything on the internet is going to say, pull that pod out, boil it again, take your electric toothbrush, scrub off those biofilms. But the compounds those bacteria are eating are inside the cells of the seed pod. You can't boil them. You would boil the pod into a million pieces before you removed them. So you just have to let nature run its course. Oak twigs are great beginners, and a lot of people have oak twigs around where they live here in the US and abroad, so that's a good thing you can collect yourself. Same thing with alder cones. I don't recommend for beginners macaronga leaves, because those have a very high acid content to them.
I was gonna ask, is there like a limit to how low botanicals will bring like a pH?
This kind of brings into, people will on social media look at an aquarium, like the photo behind me, and say, wow, you have tinted water, that's a black water aquarium. But black water aquariums have a specific chemical definition, because they're largely a product of geology. They have water that falls out of the sky, rainwater, groundwater. It flows over rocks that don't contain, inert rocks, so they don't leach carbonates, other minerals into the water column. So it's like you're using RO water, and then you take botanicals from the surrounding forest that just constantly add in humic substances, tannins to bring the pH down. So in theory, I mean, there are some blackwater habitats where the wild aquarium fish come from where the pH is like 4.2. And that's all done naturally. You use enough botanicals, run water through it enough, and you can bring the water down low enough without using any kind of like acid buffers or like pH down. The 20-gallon macrostoma tank I have over here to my right, I take RODI water and run it through a canister filter of botanicals until the pH is down to like 5.4. All done with alder cones, macaranga leaves, coconut core, and just kind of whatever bits I have left over until that pH is down. So the thing then that is brought in is this whole notion of like a pH crash. But there are compounds that are released by the leaves to help buffer the pH crash. When you only use an acid product, like over the shelf, like pH down, or I have some friends that create low pH water literally using like acid titrations, and if they don't add in the accompanying buffer, your pH can crash. But when you use whole botanicals, whole leaves, whole seed pods and such, there are still trace amounts of buffers in those leaves, and when you use them at concentrations that meaningfully bring down the pH, it also adds in a meaningful buffer to them.
What other considerations would people need when they're setting up like a botanicals tank? And like, what is the difference between a botanical tank and a biotope aquarium?
Great question. So in the realm of using botanicals in the aquarium, there's three main kinds. We have a biotope aquarium, which uses regionally accurate plants, botanicals, water conditions, water temperature, water height, flow to a specific fish and accompanying tank mates. One shell less strict is the Blackwater aquarium, which is you could use fish that appreciate low acid water from opposite continents, and you are just ensuring that you have low pH water, tinted water, plants that can tolerate the low acid and tannin concentrations. It doesn't matter if you're going to use a Bucephalandra from Southeast Asia with your cardinal tetras from South America. All we care about is pH, total dissolved minerals, KH. Then you get one shell less restrictive, which is the realm that I really like. It's what the brand has a huge guide on, which is the botanical method aquarium, which is focused not on the pH, not on regionally accurate plants with fish. It's focused on using botanicals in the aquarium to foster the ecology so that it benefits the fish and the shrimp. You are trying to hand off as much of the process of the aquarium back to nature. So immediately what comes to mind is like one of the big things that's different with the botanical method aquarium is we don't gravel vac the substrate, because there's different bacteria at the bottom of the substrate that appreciate low oxygen concentrations, and then you have detritus worms closer to the surface. They create tubes and tunnels through the substrate to help oxygenate it. Different kinds of bacteria that we want to stay in their realms. We got plant roots that are oxygenating the substrate or absorbing pockets of nutrients. We put those in. We are using botanical materials to provide a layer of the food web that's not always present in standard aquariums. The water can be tinted. The water doesn't have to be tinted. The pH can be acidic. The pH can be basic. You can do a botanical method goldfish aquarium with a pH of 7.6 and a KH, I don't know off the top of my head what they appreciate, but they like harder water. Guppies. You could do a botanical method guppy aquarium. You cannot do a black water guppy aquarium because guppies can't handle acidic water conditions. They will get where their spines get super, I forget what it's called, but their bones can't calcify.
Wow. This is like a science lesson talking to you.
It can be as scientific as you want to be when you start using botanicals. The botanical method is kind of it's more ecology. It's rooted in ecology. It's not necessarily, it's a slippery slope to the science once you start learning about the ecology. but it's really about like what can we put in the aquarium that's going to benefit the interactions, territories, breeding patterns of our fish.
Yep. I'm glad you also mentioned the other species, fish species, because you're called Betta Botanicals, but these can benefit a lot of different fish species as well.
There are so many scientific studies done on the impacts of catappa leaf extracts and fancy goldfish disease and survival, guppy fry survival. When you crush and put catappa leaves into like tilapia feed, their immune systems perform better, they're healthier. There's a million beta studies.
And you have your website, you have a presence on multiple platforms, so I'll make sure to link that in the description. Can really tell you care a lot about educating people and making sure people do this intentionally and in the right way. And obviously you care a lot about fish too. So we're really lucky to get to talk to you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be featured on your YouTube channel and be associated with your brand and mission.
Thank you so much.